The thing you said about complacency, though, that is something that's getting under my skin. Because what I'm realizing is a lot of the conservatives who have stood on the same position forever, like people like, I disagree with them, but like Gorka, Sebastian Gorka, they're getting dragged through the mud now, even though they used to be semi-popular, because they're just believing the same things they believed like 12 years ago. And the ones that do believe these things, you can see them bending and turning to kind of make sure they don't offend it. In that Ben Shapiro conversation, I told you this, we never got to talk about it. I was taken aback by how cowardly Ben acted around the Ukraine section when he was talking about aid. This is a moment where he can make the case to everyone on why Ukraine aid is important. And he spent the entirety of the conversation talking about how we had to limit aid, while aid has been blocked for like over 100 days in Congress. He should be talking to his own community, trying to communicate the value to the United States and to geopolitical security in Europe of supporting Ukraine. But instead, because it's not popular, he just makes the point, well, we can't do it forever, and says nothing else because it's not popular to defend aid to Ukraine.
Sure, and I wonder what his position was on like moving recognizing the embassy move to Jerusalem or recognizing the annexation of the Golan Heights, if he expressed as much hesitancy there, or if that was just like a full speed ahead, like, oh, this is great. Yeah. I hate people that say that Trump would be doing so much. What would Trump be doing with Ukraine, Russia right now? The guy that threatened to like disbar or leave NATO like 400 times and like didn't even understand.
The problem with trying to guess what Trump would do is it depends on who's the last person whispering to his ear, and it depends on how everybody's feeling. I don't know if you guys remember Syria, but the flip-flopping on Syria.
In the Middle East, right?
In the middle of the night, he announces that he's going to withdraw from Syria. Next day, there's a press conference. We find out it's because Erdogan called him and started pressuring him about the Kurds. And what's his explanation? Why we can't back up these allies who smashed ISIS into the ground. It's the thing he brags about all the time. We destroyed ISIS. Our bombs destroyed ISIS, but the guys who did the clearing was the SDF. What was his excuse? They weren't with us at Normandy, at D-Day. The Kurds weren't with us.
Kurdish people also did a lot of work clearing ISIS out of Iraq as well. They were a big part of the
Peshmerga.
Yeah, the Peshmerga. Yeah, from the KRG. Yeah.
But then the next day he flips again, and then a week later he flips again. He kept flipping back and forth, and that's the problem with Trump is he has no concrete foreign policy beliefs. So all he does is beat his chest. We're going to kill the families. We're going to, bathe in their blood. That's
also because, not to sound weird, but in some ways, career politicians are nice because you've got like a solid track history of like, what does this guy support? What does he believe in? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Trump doesn't have policies. Like if you say like, is Trump like a war hawk or a dumb? It's like, I don't know. Trump is a New York City real estate billionaire. I don't know what the fuck his policies are, right? So I wouldn't even expect him to have a strong position on Ukraine, Russia, or Israel, whatever. To be honest, I don't think he can find most of these places on a map. I feel pretty strongly about that. I don't think he could. When you ask him, like, I don't know if he knows who Kurdish people are.
No. I mean,
he's probably saying like from Wisconsin.
Is that he learns about an issue and then he starts shooting at it from the hip.
Yeah, exactly. What feels right, basically.
Well, and even worse is the people who say, well, this would have never happened if Trump was president, right? Those people are infuriating. It's like, okay, well, we can say maybe COVID never happens if Hillary was president or something. Maybe 1 million Americans are alive, so we can all play this game.
Trump was a master of kicking the can down the road on everything. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Doha agreements set Biden up for failure in Afghanistan. We were drawn down to historically low numbers there. The Abraham Accords set the Israel-Palestine disaster up because the whole impetus for those starting was Netanyahu going to annex the West Bank, and then other countries, the Emiratis, I think the Saudis, like, oh well, hold on a second there, and they're like, okay, fuck it, let's just do this and not include the Palestinians at all. Like he even sunset a lot of the provisions for legislation on it was forgiving all of the FICA taxes, I think. Remember?
I don't remember.
No. There was during COVID, there was legislation that was passed, I think, to make it so that your FICA taxes weren't paid, but the provision sunset, and you'd have to retroactively pay them if it didn't get like expanded after Trump left. Like, the kicking the can down the road, and then people would be like, well, if Trump was the leader, then he would have had to pick up his own can. Sorry.
One last thing about the Ukraine thing and about Trump possibly stopping the invasion. Two things. Number one, Trump was the person who leveraged aid for political favors to the Ukrainians. So if he's willing to choose himself
well, actually,
over
it didn't
Ukraine,
work, so that didn't count because they didn't actually do it.
But if he's willing to choose himself over the Ukrainians, that's an issue that could lead to Putin thinking, well, maybe I can make something beneficial for him that can make him abandon the Ukrainians. And secondly, he told European officials that if Europe was attacked, he wouldn't come to their defense. If Putin hears that from some meeting, from some leak, what message does that say about our deterrence in Europe? Not only in Ukraine and Moldova, but even in NATO states.
Yeah.
Also, who is the better politician? Because I think Putin has no problem picking up the phone and calling Trump and just schmoozing the fuck out of him.
True.
And I think Trump would love to hear that. Like, if you say good, positive, it would literally become a dick-sucking fest between, can Zelensky, can all the European leaders, or can like Putin give the best head to Trump in terms of convincing him like who he should support. Because literally, if you say a good thing about Trump, he will sing your praises from the rooftop. It's so great.
Defense Minister Shoigu gave a speech about what the plan is, how long they have to fight, and every time he says 2025.
Well, in like the Gaza war, a lot of people are saying that happened because Iran was scared that we were about to normalize relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. And that's Biden. He was getting us super, super close to that. And so Hamas felt they had to do something to get attention back to the Palestinian cause. So it just drives me crazy when people say, if Trump was president, none of these problems would happen, and they get away with that. And Trump says it too. Nut job.
I feel like it's made a lot of people rethink the way they look at things, because if you look at in history, people have this debate over, was this event owed to personalities or structures, right? Was this because of financial incentives or like material conditions or anything like that, or was it because of just like the personality of whoever's in charge? And obviously, if you're in a monarchy, the personality is very important. If you're in a republic like America, usually like they try I think the American Constitution is supposed to be very much limiting powers of the executive branch. But then Trump comes in, and it's like the fact that these foreign policy decisions can just be made based on like how cold Trump's chicken nuggies were when they arrived that morning. That really kind of shakes a lot of the historical structuralist views.
In some ways, the U.S. government is like structurally very slow, but in other ways, probably because we actually elect our head of state. The head of state in the United States does have a lot of power and leeway sometimes to influence like the direction of especially foreign policy, but a lot of domestic issues as well.
I think people realized how much power is in the executive branch when Trump took over. I mean, the tariffs were able to affect change in like global trade. I mean, things way beyond the United States. So I always say Trump is going to make America great again, but not the way he thinks. It's the swing back, because we learned a lot of lessons. He stress tested a lot of things, and I think we learn from that and we grow and we get better. But it's going to take a while.
We've already done certain reforms. For example, like the elector reform, where the electors have to vote with the choices of their constituents.